truly believe that they may not have some of the necessities to be, let's say, a field manager or perhaps a general manager.
You really believe that? It was a statement that shocked America. People demanded reform, get more minorities into baseball's front office.
Winfield's got a gun for an arm, and he shoots him down at second base.
But 4 years later, baseball's home run king charges that nothing has changed.
I still don't see any involvement at all as far as blacks, as far as their participation in the major league level and not in the minor leagues.
We'll be joined tonight by Hank Aaron and by the commissioner of baseball, Fay Vincent.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppell.
It is not, if truth be told, the way we would like things to be, but most of our Nightline broadcasts have a half-life of only a few hours. They may be the topic of some discussion over the breakfast table, but few of our programs sustain interest through the next day's lunch. One notable exception was an interview I did about 4 years ago with Al Campanis, then of the Los Angeles Dodgers. As you may recall, Mr. Campanis explained the absence of more blacks in the front offices of Major League Baseball clubs by suggesting that blacks lack the necessities. The impact of that remark continues to reverberate to this day. A long conversation that I had with Mr. Campanis a few weeks later convinced me that he is probably far less bigoted than many of his colleagues. But whereas most of them would be prudent enough to keep their prejudices out of camera and microphone range, he was not. If anyone thought, however, that the furor over his remarks on Nightline would bring about fundamental changes in Major League Baseball, they were wrong. Here's Dave Marish.
Jackie Robinson sure started something. His 1947 debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers broke racial barriers not just for baseball, but all of America's professional sports. Today, 75% of the players in the National Basketball Association are black, as are 60% of the players in the National Football League. In Major League Baseball, though, in 1989, the last year for which figures are available, just 17% of the players were black. And that was down from 21% in 1988 and 23% in the mid-1960s. And among the 26 teams in Big League Baseball, there are just 2 black field managers and no black general managers, an absence from hiring and firing power that Hall of Fame outfielder Hank Aaron calls evidence of baseball's racism towards black athletes.
They think the only thing that blacks can do is just go out and hit the baseball, run the bases, and after that, you know, you ride in the front seat of the bus for 10 years, and after your career is over with, then they flop you right back in the back of the bus again.
Suspicions that baseball is excluding blacks from management power rise as managers fall. And in this young season, 5 teams have replaced their field leaders. Out went 4 whites and a black to be replaced by 4 whites and a black.
People are going to start, having jokes about, quotas pretty soon. I mean, they, dare not let Frank Robinson and Hal McRae be in the league at the same time, lest there be 3 black managers.
When it comes to the serious issue of racism in baseball, time is measured in BC and AC, before and after Campanis.
They may not have some of the necessities to be, let's say, a field manager or perhaps a general manager.
But 4 years later, there's just 1 black pitching coach and no black third base coaches in the major leagues.
Those are the positions that yield the real hot managerial prospects, and until something's done at those spots, you're just going to see the same names recycled.
But baseball's black problem is not restricted to top management. You can see it in the stands where fewer blacks are buying tickets, and you can see it most of all on the sandlots where evidence suggests fewer blacks are playing the game.
I think it's sort of dying out now because we don't play as much baseball here in this area, and the participation is not as great as it used to be.
John Wood coached baseball at Washington's Spingarn High School for 13 years. He saw teams that had 20 to 25 players shrink to little more than half that size until 2 years ago when Spingarn simply stopped fielding a team. What went wrong? Wood points to battered recreation budgets, disbanded summer leagues, and he points out for high school athletes.
The scholarship incentives are definitely in football and basketball.
Without many full scholarships to offer, college baseball is losing the poor black athlete. This week in Omaha, 200 ball players are contesting the annual College World Series. Just 13 of them are black. Last year, it was 6 blacks in the College World Series out of 179 players.
One time, come on now.
But there is hope for the future. In south central Los Angeles, about 450 youngsters aged 13 to 18 are picking up the finer points of baseball, as many as 6 afternoons a week in the RBI League. This project is partially funded by Major League Baseball, but it's really been brought to life by Texas Rangers scout John Young. These teenagers get academic tutoring and counseling, as well as baseball coaching. And they also get the visible support of their parents in the stands. These folks should remind us that the ultimate baseball scene in what many consider the ultimate baseball movie isn't about a big league game or any organized game. It's about pitch and catch between father and child, a form of intimate baseball communion fast disappearing from America's black communities.
It's really sort of disheartening, you know, for someone who grew up playing baseball and catch with his father. You don't see it. I mean, the basketball courts are overrun. Even the tennis courts, especially here, seem to be more populated. Again, the ball fields are just overrun with weeds and glass.
Baseball calls itself the national pastime, but statistics on black attendance and participation indicate the game may be passing the black part of this nation by. That's an outcome nobody wants, but nobody's figured out yet how to change it. I'm Dave Marish for Nightline in Los Angeles.
When we come back, we'll be joined by baseball legend Hank Aaron, who has been outspoken in his criticism of Major League Baseball and its commissioner for a continued lack of commitment to minority hiring. And we'll be joined by the commissioner of Major League Baseball, Vincent. Joining us now live from our bureau in Atlanta is baseball's all-time home run hitter Hank Aaron, who retired as a player in 1976 and now serves as senior vice president for the Atlanta Braves. Mr. Aaron rekindled the controversy with charges of racism in his recent autobiography. And from our studios in New York, Vincent, who is now in his second season as the commissioner of Major League Baseball. Commissioner Vincent, baseball is often depicted in this country as something of a metaphor for life in the United States. Is it, in that sense, a continuing, accurate reflection of what's going on in society as a whole?
Well, I think there's something to that, Ted. I think we do reflect the problems, the joys, some of the difficulties of society generally. And certainly in this area, I would be less than honest if I didn't acknowledge that there are major concerns and major problems in our game, and we've got significant distance to go to get to a fairer state.
Now, there was a considerable amount of passion that was kindled by the Al Campanis remarks 4 years ago, but there was also a lot of hope in the wake of that, hope that somehow folks had woken up a little bit and things were going to change a lot. Why hadn't they?
Well, I don't think it's fair to say they haven't changed, Ted. I think we have made considerable progress. You know, I think statistics are relevant, though someone said they're big lies, little lies, and then there's statistics. I think we have made significant progress, and I think any fair-minded person would see that progress. We've got a greater percentage of minorities in the front office and the business part of baseball. In the commissioner's office that I run, we've got 21% of our employees as minorities. We have a black president of the National League we didn't have 4 years ago. I think the highest ranking black in probably any sports position in this country. We have made progress, and yet I think it's certainly fair to say that there's a lot more room for improvement.
What, Mr. Aaron, were you complaining about? Not enough progress, or would you go even further, that there just hasn't been any?
Well, Ted, I'm different with the commissioner. I think that we've seen some progress, but since 4 years ago when Al Campanis made his famous statement on Nightline, We had 2 black managers, I believe, at that time. And when the commissioner said that we've made significant gains, I just don't know what gains are he talking about. You know, he's talking about the commissioner's office. That's fine. But I think when you talk about baseball, we're talking about baseball totally. We're not talking about just the National American League. We're talking about baseball from the minor league standpoint, from Little League, and et cetera. We just saw a film clip just recently, you've shown, that we need to go a little bit deeper than just trying to get minorities involved in baseball from a Little League standpoint.
And where does the responsibility lie? I mean, where would you
no question about it then, Ted. I think baseball has a responsibility. I think baseball has a responsibility to show minorities in this country that since Jackie Robinson broke into baseball, that they are concerned about their presence, not only as a baseball player, but being involved from a total standpoint, not only from coaching, management, but also from being vendors, doctors, lawyers, whatever it has to offer. I think that baseball owes that to minorities.
And when you say baseball, I mean that's the institution. Who has the responsibility? Name some
names. I think it has to start, Ted, from the top. You know, I believe, and I'm not pointing a finger at anyone, but I think that baseball has a responsibility to start letting blacks or minorities know that they are concerned with this. You know, it disturbs me when I see the decline in black participation from a major league level, trying to get to the baseball end of it, because it's more than just trying to get, because, you know, baseball is a very expensive game. You know, when you take a baseball player and you put a baseball glove on a youngster or a uniform or put a bat in his hand, that costs an awful lot of money. And I think baseball itself deserves and ought to try and do something for these youngsters.
Now, Commissioner Vincent, it's cheaper, though, I would assume, than football, in the sense of the uniform and everything that you need to play the game, and even the space that's needed to play the game is roughly equivalent. Why do you think it is that baseball seems to be fading away as a sport among our black youngsters, whereas football has certainly increased phenomenally?
Well, I think it is a legitimate concern, and I have to say I think Hank is doing us all a service by continuing to call attention to the problem. We are aware that the competition for young athletes, for kids playing sports, is now much more intense. Basketball is an emerging and powerful force, not just among black kids, but among all young kids. And we are concerned about getting baseball back into the younger levels to energize our involvement with kids. We've started something called Rookie Ball, which is intended to get very young kids playing baseball, and it's been very successful. We've got probably 225,000 kids in these programs today, and they're brand new. What you're about to talk to John Young about in terms of his RBI program is important to us, and we were instrumental, I think John would agree, in getting it started. We agree that baseball needs to be more active, more energetic with young kids. We are losing them, and we're concerned. It's not just an issue of blacks, it's an issue of a number of young kids who are terrific athletes, who are interested, not staying with baseball. And Ted, you have to remember, too, that, and I think Hank is really the example of this, it's a very difficult game. One of the most sublime and difficult achievements in sports is to hit a baseball. You can practice basketball and you can practice football and be successful. There's an awful lot you can do, but you really cannot make yourself successful in baseball.
Although that doesn't address the issue of why more blacks seem to be moving away from it and more whites.
Well, I think it's more kids moving away, Ted. I think blacks are part of the story. Kids are moving away from baseball in part for the reasons you suggest. There are active programs in the inner cities and in some of our cities where kids are finding basketball very attractive, less space. We need to do a lot more, and we are addressing the problem. It's going to take time, it's going to take money, and I think we are on the case.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be joined by a scout for the Texas Rangers who has founded a program that is trying to revive baseball in the inner city. Joining us now from Orange County, California is John Young, a scout for the Texas Rangers and founder of an organization called RBI, whose goal is to give inner city youth an opportunity to play baseball. But let me cut to the chase. How long have you been a scout?
About 13 years, Ted.
Why are you still a scout?
I enjoy it. There's different aspects of scouting, from amateurs to high schools to your professionals to the Major League Scouting, and I've been doing Major League Scouting for 4 years, and I really enjoy it.
What's the ladder for a scout?
I think that all depends on the organizational structure and the scout himself. I think to be a scouting director, you probably have to be a national cross-checker, and I've been a cross-checker before, and the Chicago White Sox have just hired Ron Schuler as their general manager, who was a special assignment scout with the Oakland A's, and that's currently my position with the Texas Rangers. So it all depends on the organizational structure.
How many blacks, I mean, just to give us an example of how people rise through that particular branch of the hierarchy, how many blacks have risen from scouts up the normal progression?
I think two, myself and Reggie Waller, who's a assistant to the general manager of the Seattle Mariners.
Why do you think so few?
Well, I don't think that scouting has really been presented to ex-players as the vehicle to be in management. I think you have to look and see that of the 26 general managers, I think 19 of them started as scouts. So I don't think this has been presented to ex-ball players. Also, I think that so many times that when we talk about minority hirings, we always look for the ex-Major League ball players instead of the people that started as scouts or maybe played in the minor leagues that paid the same dues as, say, a Pat Gillick or Bill LaJoy. And it seems that when we look toward minorities, we want guys that have been superstars.
Mr. Aaron, that brings us right back to you. As you listened to what Fay Vincent had to say before, it certainly sounded like all the right words, all the right sentiments. You've heard it before, of course.
Yes, I have, 4 years ago.
And
I think we have moved off a dime, Ted. I think that we are still where we were 4 years. Well, I think we're where we were in 47. I just believe, I know Mr. Vincent, the commissioner, had said that he talked about Bill White, and he talked about one or two other things, but I think that baseball has not really proven itself to be fair with minorities at all. I see nothing that has improved or would change my mind about it. One thing in particular, I have seen players, for that matter, just people come through the organization and have gotten to the point where they have just literally stood still, done nothing. And yet you've seen other people who has failed in different positions, be it as a manager, general manager, just continue to go around and around like a good old boy circle, and these things are beginning to trickleate just like they were, say, a few years ago. And that's what bothers me about baseball, is that if you get into a clique with baseball, you stay in that clique for a long time.
Let me just go to Commissioner Vincent again, because we're down to our last minute. I am reminded as Hank Aaron talks about managers who just keep coming back, of the late Billy Martin. Lord knows there was a man who came back again and again and again and again. You would think that there wasn't any other talent out there.
Well, I think that happens, and I think it happens in baseball as well as in other professions. Look, all I can deal with is facts. I can't persuade Henry other than with facts. It seems to me we have made progress. I've cited to you a number of the facts. I have told you that there is work to be done, and we are working on it. I invite you to continue to look at this from a outside point of view and judge us by our progress. But it doesn't do any good to tell me that we have not made progress since 1947. I dispute that. We have made substantial progress.
Well, I have to say that, Commissioner, because there's nothing been done since 47. I mean, I can see just little dips and dabs here and there, and I think that if anyone would say that baseball has been fair, I think they're just blowing hot air, because it has not been fair. Not even from Little League standpoint all the way to the major leagues.
Commissioner, you want to get a last word in?
Well, I disagree. Obviously, I think there were no blacks in Major League Baseball in 1947 until Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby came. We now have a substantial number. Baseball on the field is a perfect meritocracy. If you can play you will play in the big leagues. On the management side, we need to do better. But on the field, there's no disputing the fact that anybody who can play will play in the big leagues with ability.
All right, gentlemen, we've actually run a little beyond our time. I thank you all very much for joining us, Mr. Aaron, Commissioner Vincent, Mr. Young. I'll be back with the program note right after this. We've just found a minute we didn't think we had, so let me go back to John Young, who got a little bit of a short stick, or the short end of the stick here. Why is yours the only program, and we've got, as I say, about a minute, why is yours the only program of its kind to bring black youngsters into the game of baseball?
Well, we've got a lot of interest from other cities that would like to do the same thing we're doing with RBI. I think we need to continue to solicit corporate sponsors. I think we need more of an ongoing commitment from Major League Baseball to make this thing work. The reason it works in Los Angeles is because you've got a unique situation with baseball scouts involved in it. You've got the community people involved in it. You've got friends that I played baseball with on the sandlots that are involved with the program. We have people involved with RBI that played baseball at the collegiate level, and you just don't see a lot of blacks playing baseball at the collegiate level. So these are the people that helped put RBI together.
All right, John Young, thanks very much. And again, my thanks to Commissioner Vincent and to Hank Aaron. I appreciate all of you joining us. I'm Ted Koppell in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been Nightline.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.